Hi, I'm Jessica Reeves, and this is my EDL 850 Module 16 case study final over Internet use violations and threats of the World Wide Web. What do we know? We know that Ms. Walker's a new teacher and she feels threatened by her students. We know that Ms. Walker's classes have been an issue of academic stress for high academic achieving students. We know that Ms. Walker is highly qualified and knows her content well. She has her master's. She's highly qualified. We know that Ms. Walker has not been able to successfully implement suggestions to help with student stress and create positive student interactions. And we know that this takes place at a large, affluent high school. What do we need to know? We need to know who created the site or how it originated so that there can be consequences for that. We need to know that Ms. Walker can effectively teach the content she's very knowledgeable of. We need to know why Ms. Walker's classes are so high stress and why academically gifted students are struggling. And lastly, we need to know that there's a possibility for improvement and moving forward for both the students and Ms. Walker. Identifying the problem. There's a few problems going on. We have a teacher who feels threatened. We have students struggling because of high stress academics. And these are students who are your valedictorians or your top cream of the crop class. And we have a teacher who is young and needs to work on classroom instruction. And lastly, we have a student who acted out because they've been frustrated in that classroom. My plan of action would be to immediately after the phone call, we need to forward this email and the threatening website to find the creator. We're going to forward that to our IT people so they can track that down. And next, we need to meet with Ms. Walker to reassure her of her safety and anything we've learned about the creator by that point, and inform her of her rights as the teacher and what she can do. Third, we need to pull in the student who created it and have a conference with them and their parents. And lastly, we need to bring Ms. Walker back in and discuss more mentoring options on how to improve her classroom environment and set up observations to ensure that she is improving and working on that. Appropriate steps to implement our plan. Immediately, we can forward the email and website to IT and let them know we need to track down the creator and for them to report findings to us by early morning. And hopefully that shouldn't be an issue. It is important that when we meet with Ms. Walker, she understands we support her in working to resolve this issue. It is scary for a teacher to be in that position, and support is the biggest deal. You don't want her going in there feeling unsupported because that can make things much more volatile. When we conference with the student, they need to understand that no matter how frustrated they are, they can't threaten someone's life. That's not okay. And that they will receive consequences for that action, and make sure the parents are aware of the situation and how it's being handled at the school. And lastly, in our follow-up with Ms. Walker, we need to talk about how she's confident in her content, but her classroom strategies need help, and that's expected with a new teacher. So we're going to provide her with professional development, checking in on her room regularly, and see that that atmosphere in her classroom is improving, as well as I think we should set her up with a veteran mentor teacher in the school to help her fine-tune her instruction. When we're looking at it, we need to look at what's best for students. We need to assure students that no matter how frustrated they are, creating threatening websites is not the answer. That's not how you're going to solve life's issues. And even though it may not necessarily have happened at school, it's still a school issue because it's stemming from a classroom issue and it's towards the staff and one of the teachers. And they need to know that there's consequences for their actions. That's not just high school. That's everywhere in life. You're going to have a consequence for each action you have. It's also vital that they know that we are hearing what they're saying and want them to have quality educational experience. So here's what's happening. And in the future, if there's issues, they need to be brought to the attention of the administration and counseling. They shouldn't let something fester this long that it becomes this huge issue that they feel the only way to express themselves is to create a threatening website. We also need to ensure that we have quality classroom environments in our school community and work to make whatever changes necessary for that to happen, whether it's mentoring, increased observations. Something obviously needs to be done in that classroom to improve that quality of education. Resolution of the problem. We know that we've discussed with Ms. Walker ways to improve her classroom environment and instruction, but now we need to set her up with a mentor or veteran teacher to observe how they interact with students, as well as how do they set up their classroom environment for being inviting, but still have expectations of students. She needs to be able to see that in action, especially being a new teacher. There's a lot you just don't know until you see it, until you've done it, and she needs to be able to see that. By mentoring professional development, we can help Ms. Walker improve her instruction and improve the students' quality of education from her classes. We know that she is qualified to teach her content. We know this. That's why she was hired. But because she's a new teacher, she's still learning, and she needs that extra little push to figure out how to work with students, because that's a big part of the job. Concerning the problem with the student creating the website, once we've identified the culprit, we've uncovered their reasoning behind the site. They will have to write a formal apology to Ms. Walker and for their threatening comments. For those comments, they'll receive a disciplinary action in accordance with the student handbook. Yes, there was a problem in the classroom that made them so frustrated they did this. They created the website, but creating that website is not an okay response to being frustrated in the classroom. What I was feeling as I was reading this case study, as I responded to the case, I felt the struggle of being a young teacher and not always knowing how to approach things or how they should be done. I feel that every new teacher needs a certain level of mentoring and guidance no matter their level of degree in education. She may have her master's, but she's never taught. She taught for 1 year, and even that year she struggled. We need, especially young teachers, we need to see it. Like you don't learn it in college. You learn it when you start. And a lot of that is just done through watching other veteran teachers who figured it out the same way you have, and hopefully they can give you some good advice. I felt how the teacher felt because it's an awful feeling dreading going to school, feeling unsupported, and that's why I felt it was so important to reassure Ms. Walker we're supporting her, but here's some steps that she needs to make to improve her classroom. What I was thinking, I think that it's imperative students know their boundaries. They must understand that threatening people because you're upset with them is never an okay thing to do. Part of helping students and doing what's best for them is to have set guidelines and consequences. While I think the teacher's methods definitely played a role in this, the student acted out of line, and if we're preparing them for real life after school, they need to realize you cannot threaten or create threatening websites for everyone you disagree with. What I was valuing while I was reading this case study, while reading and evaluating this case, I feel the teacher needs to know that she is valued in her school community. The students and parents also need to know that their comments are valued as well, and work is being done to improve their education. I think we need to place the highest value on education and students, so that being said, we need to do more than just discuss with new teachers. We need to ensure that they are working hard to improve and try new methods. Like I said, we need to create that mentoring program. We need to make sure that their classroom, yes, their content is great, they know it, but do they know how to tell students or teach students the content? You can be the smartest person out there, but you may not be teacher material because you can't relay that information. Unresolved issues needing further investigation. Issues that may still need investigation are whether or not Ms. Walker is capable and willing to make the necessary changes to her instructions so that she's able to more effectively teach. If she's not willing and able to do that, she may need to find a new place. We also need to investigate how serious the consequences could be towards a student should Ms. Walker decide she wants to press charges, and those need to be possible situations we're aware of. Ms. Walker has rights, and if she feels threatened, and if the threatening website, if she wants to turn that into the law, she can, and we need to be aware of what could happen should she decide to do that. How do I demonstrate a sense of integrity and ethical behavior that serves as a model for all members of the school community? I think we did this by taking into account both the back history and the following actions we need to take action to both ensure the classroom environment improves and that the students understand their actions are not going to be tolerated. When we set guidelines and enforce them and work to improve their education, we're promoting the academic success of every student. Students want guidelines. They want something to do. It helps them become learners. It helps them in their school environment. They don't realize they want it, but they do. How did you treat people fairly, equitably, and with dignity and respect? By meeting with Ms. Walker and demonstrating that we support her as a teacher in our school community and want to help her improve, we're showing her respect. We also need to be fair and not just assume that it was Randy as Ms. Walker assumes. We need to have due diligence and adhere to ethical principles and professional norms by ensuring we have all the facts before we act on anything so that we can treat all sides fairly. It's incredibly important we just don't grill Randy and say, you made this website, when we have no idea if it was actually him or not. We need to make sure we have all the facts before we proceed. How did you demonstrate a personal and professional code of ethics that inspires others to a higher level of performance? By listening to all sides of the story between Ms. Walker and the offending students, we're demonstrating a personal and professional code of ethics. For example, we could have just taken Ms. Walker's word for it, that it was probably Randy, but it's much more professional to find the actual culprit. If we just assume it's Randy, we can create a whole other snake pit of issues. On the same token, it was essential we demonstrate support for Ms. Walker as she's a part of our staff, and it's invaluable for the staff to feel supported by their administration. There is no worse feeling in the world than going into your school in the morning knowing you don't have your admin's support. They don't have your back. You're on your own. And that's not something we want any teacher to feel. We want to make sure they understand they're part of that school community, and as long as they're willing, we're here to help them.